Hello and welcome, everyone. So excited to have you all here today. We are going to dive into one of my favorite topics, and I have my partner in communion online with me today to drop some knowledge as well. So I'm just going to pass the mic to introduce our guest speaker, who we will be passing the mic between each other to drop some knowledge between the both of us. And so just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules before we get started here, as I know we've got a lot of folks who are going to join us today, and just want to make sure everyone is feeling comfortable and confident in this next hour. So if you are here live with us, thank you for joining us. This is part 2 of a 3-part series that Matthew Reynolds and I are doing, focusing on equity and emotional intelligence. Today, we're going to be focusing on equitable communication. So we would love for you to participate. We're going to ask you to do a lot of self-reflection work. We might ask for you to share your own story if you feel called to do so. So with that said, we'd love for you all to drop things in the chat whenever you feel called to do so. You are also welcome to turn your cameras on and join us here in the virtual space. No pressure, no shame if you don't feel called to do so, but I know some of you might need that extra invitation. So if you do feel called to do so, go ahead and turn on your cameras. We'd love to see your beautiful faces here as you are. Doesn't matter if you just rolled out of bed. Doesn't matter if you're stuffing your face with food. If you're on your lunch break, we appreciate you. But please feel free to turn your cameras on if you're here with us. Otherwise, feel free to drop things in the chat as they come up. So any questions, any reflections, any of your own tips and tricks that you want to share with us, please make use of the chat. Also make use of the chat by networking amongst yourselves. So if you have any projects that you're working on, if you want to highlight anything going on in your company, if you want to send people to your social links, so your LinkedIn, a lot of folks here use LinkedIn, but if you have any other links you'd like to drop, feel free to use the chat to network amongst yourselves here. We're all interested in this topic. So I think, if I invite you all to join the chat and drop your preferred ways of connecting, hopefully you all can keep the conversation going after we finish this hour. So we are recording. You all who are joining us live will be able to get a mindful leadership badge through Power to Fly if you attend all 3 conversations that Matthew and I have lined up for you. Now, this is the second conversation. So if you missed the first one, there's still a chance for you to be able to get that mindful leadership badge. You just have to rewatch part 1, and I'll drop the link in the chat in a few moments. So you'll have to rewatch part 1, and you'll have to fill out a quick form that will just let us know that you were paying attention and all that jazz, and you'll still be eligible to get our mindful leadership badge here for today's conversation, for this 3-part conversation, I should say. So if anyone has anything, that is sensitive that they don't want to hop off mute and talk about, or they don't want to write publicly in the chat, feel free to message either myself or Matthew Reynolds privately in the chat, and we will raise your reflection or your question and keep you anonymous. So please feel free to write to us privately if you have any sensitive information there. All right, so without further ado, I'll just briefly introduce myself for those of you who have not heard me before emceeing or moderating or facilitating here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariela Marie. I'm calling from the mighty mountains of Patagonia, Argentina, the original lands of the Mapuche people. And I love to invite anyone who wants to work with me or just commune with me, share with me. I love to invite folks to deepen our emotional intelligence on a personal level and also on a communal level so that we can be the change we want to see and really use our innate gifts to our abilities, to our prime abilities, so that we can be the change we want to see and call for this social impact work that we also desperately want and need, especially for those of us who call ourselves leaders in different spaces. So I invite you all to connect with me. I'll drop some links in the chat as well for you to connect with me on LinkedIn, as well as support the project that I'm working on that is called the Positive Force Team, where we do social impact productions. Matthew Reynolds and I are doing some work there as well. So would love to have you all sign up for my newsletter and just keep abreast with all the things I've got in store for you all this year. So I'll drop some links in just a few moments. But for now, I'm going to pass the mic to my partner in community, Matthew Reynolds. Let us know a little bit about yourself for those who weren't able to join part 1. Let us know why you do what you do, and then I will ask you some questions to help set the stage a little later after your introduction. So thank you for being here with us, Matthew. I appreciate you, and let people know who you are and why you're here.
Mariella, thank you so very much for inviting me in the ways in which you did just now, and the ways in which you always set a space that feels not only safe and comforting and comfortable, but a safe that feel or a space, sorry, that feels very brave and courageous and allows me to fully bring my authenticity to the room, which sometimes I have a lot of voices in my head. I have my internalized racial oppressions and indoctrinations from the status quo that sometimes leap in front of me and want to either throw out that imposter syndrome or throw out negative self-talk that keeps me from actually bringing my authentic self, or power dynamics that are in the room that sometimes keep me from that. And I know that a lot of the folks who are out there that are listening or rewatching this recording will know those ideas of power dynamics, and know that sometimes as leaders within our organizations or the leaders of a team of people, we have run into some of those ideas before. And so I think that in these sessions that we're offering, what I'm pulling forward or bringing forward of the work that I put into the world is the idea of expanding into our biggest, fullest, and brightest, and being able to allow ourselves to lead with our humanity. And I know that a lot of times the world is so product driven and productivity driven that we sometimes leave the humanity out. And that's why it can feel like a doldrum. It can feel like a catch-22 that we continue to spit the same things out over and over again. And so to help us, would this be a good place, Mariella, to drop us all in?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Matthew. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can get our faces here bright and big on the screen. Let me just pin the both of us here. All right, so you highlighted a word that, I mean, since the moment I met you, you have anchored yourself in challenging us and supporting us to be our authentic selves wherever we take up space in the world, whether that be at work, at home, in the streets, when we're playing, wherever. So I would love for you to help set the stage today for those who are joining us live virtually. Help us to tap into our authenticity by helping us to ground, helping us to reflect, and just so that we can go through these questions that folks have previously submitted with some deep knowledge, some collective wisdom, and also to help shed whatever layers of those voices that might tell us, oh, I don't even know why I'm here. I need to be eating, or I need to be doing some other work, to help us get present and focused. So please help us to ground in that space, Matthew.
Thank you so much, Mariella. And as Mariella is helping set the scene where we're at right now, I know that some of us might be in a work environment or a home environment, or we may be at a cafe or somewhere else or something like that. So please, by all means, do what you can for where you're at. Also do what you can for your physical structure and how your body is and how your body moves through the world, how your body is shaped, and what it is for you as I talk us through, okay? And so what I want us to do is, for your body, I want us to have both feet on the ground best we can. Allow the palms of our hands to be by our knees or on our thighs, somewhere where our shoulders can just relax down. And for some of us, we might need to scrunch our shoulders up around our ears so that we see what that feels like. Rotate that back and just drop that down. Now I'm going to let my pelvis be very heavy in the chair, not so much so that my lower back, the curve, natural curve, rounds out of it and I sink down, but that my pelvis is nice and heavy as there's a beam of light shooting out of the top of my head and out into the universe, just as far as it can go. And so those two forces are pulling in opposite directions. Heavy pelvis going down into the center of the earth, into that hot molten lava, and beam of light going out of the crown of the head out into space. And those two opposing forces allowing my spine, my posture muscles, and everything to just kind of elongate and feel a sense of floating as my eyes slowly close. And if you're like, I can't close my eyes all the way, it makes me uncomfortable, then I call this looking through the lashes. So look through your eyelashes. It's a softer focus. I'm not trying to focus on any one thing. And as I sit here, I'm visualizing my lungs being three-dimensional, because that is exactly what they are. They are these three-dimensional organs inside of our body that help oxygenate our blood, help keep things moving in our system, help everything working, this intricate, very dense system that is the human body and how it works. And so as I fill my lungs up from the bottom up, so I'm imagining how far down in my body my lungs go. And when I take my next breath, I'm filling it up from the bottom up towards the top. So I'm sensing, that I've got breath that is happening deeper down towards my belly and not just in the upper chest. As I take another deep breath in and let that air out. Another deep breath in. And exhale out. Taking another deep breath in. Feeling my lungs for the three-dimensional organs that they are. And I'm going to exhale out. Staying on mute. Please repeat after me. I am strong. I am confident. I am powerful. I am strong. I am confident. I am powerful. I am strong. I am confident. I am powerful. Recognizing now in your system what stating those words did. Is there a place of warmth or tingles or constriction? Did you choose not to say the words? Did a voice pop into your head after you said the words? What did that voice have to say? What is coming up for you right now? As you allow yourself to be in this space with others, to allow the truth of this moment in. So for our own definitions of biggest, fullest, and brightest, we allow ourselves to expand into our biggest, fullest, and brightest. And we are slowly allowing ourselves to come back into our bodies, maybe some taps on the thighs with the hands, slowly opening the eyes back up again, allowing ourselves to be in the room. Thank you all for being here. I want you to think back now through that process. And were there any emotions that were coming up for you during that process? And I'm going to share my screen. And it may not look as large as it could here. So it might be kind of difficult. You might need to lean in a little bit. But one of the things that we're told is that we as humans don't understand the depth of our emotions. And my judgment is because there's been so much say about you're too emotional. You got to keep your emotions in check. You got to do these ba 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 la la la. We talked in our last series about that and about how our emotions actually are what define us as humans. So as you can see in the very center, we have surprised, bad, fearful, angry, disgusted, sad, happy. And then in those wedges going out are even more descriptive words, which are our emotions, and how big it is around that outside circle, and how many different ways we can explain the emotions that we are going through. So if you've got something to write with and something to write on, or your phone, or you just want to think about it, what emotional journey did you go through just now on that dropping in exercise that we did just a moment ago? What emotions came up when you said, I am strong, I am confident, I am powerful? How did that affect your system and where you're at and what's going on for you and your authenticity? The truth of those moments as we went through. One more thing as I stop sharing and change this. This is what's called an emotion wheel. You can Google this and many different varied types come up with various connectors and various ideas around them. To me, I like to use this just to show how multifaceted we as human beings are, because there's so many various ways to describe our emotions, or to say that this is the emotion I'm feeling right now as we drop in. And I think that that's an important aspect of the idea of an equitable communication style. And so when I'm talking about that and referring to an equitable communication style, I'm looking at it from the perspective of how we recognize the other in the room. Am I seeing them as someone who is more powerful than me? Am I seeing them as someone who has some access needs that need to be addressed? Am I allowing for time for them to speak? Am I also knowing that I'm not centering them, saying that they're speaking fully for any of their identifiers? I don't speak for the Black community. I don't speak for the gay community. I don't speak for the male community. I speak for Matthew and my lived experiences. But am I given that space? Am I given that equity when I come into a room to be able to speak from my lived experience and have that be recognized and listened to? Because listening also is a verb, and it's one of the actionable steps of creating equitable communications. So as we move forward and we continue our conversation, these are some of the ideas to start having in the forefront of your mind as we continue to talk and describe things that were coming up for us right now. And as Mariella and I do our best to respond to the questions that you've put in for us. And super, super happy to be here. Thank you again, Maria. Thank you, Power to Fly, for having us.
Thank you, Matthew Reynolds, for walking us through that beautiful grounding meditation or just exercise to help us connect and recognize what is happening within us and around us. So I want to just invite folks, if you did write something when Matthew was giving those prompts out, go ahead and drop those in the chat if you feel, or write to us privately and we'll just shout you out without calling your name. I do also want to highlight that we have Nana here who wrote, I've been using the How We Feel app for the past year to check in with my emotions. They feel much more manageable now. So thank you for dropping that resource in the chat. I'll be looking at that app as well. So thank you for that. All right, so as folks are dropping in the chat, again, feel free to, yes, Matthew.
And I have one that could be something that many feel similar that came to me directly saying, it was hard for me to say out loud because I struggle with self-confidence and feeling self-empowered. I'm not sure I deserve to feel that way, but I want to get there and do my best for myself and the company I am part of. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for speaking your truth and bringing that in.
Yes. Thank you for writing privately to Matthew. And again, just want to shout out, if anyone doesn't feel comfortable writing in the public chat, just write to us privately and we would love to share your reflections or questions and keep you anonymous. So yeah, that person is not alone for sure. And this is the work, like, yes, Matthew and I, we go through that. I think it's also part of our human evolution to combat that, to not fall into that trap of second guessing ourselves and, being able to communicate in a way that speaks to our authenticity. So yes, let's move on to these questions, right? What do you think about that? So you've mentioned briefly in your introduction, equitable communication. I just want to lean into that a little deeper here, specifically for this first question that I want to start with to just kick us off here. So what do you mean? What do we mean by equitable communication? So Matthew, let us know how you want to take us there. And also, I'd just love for you to also share, after you define it, share your offering that you have been working with for a couple of years now, virtually and in person, so that people can hear, maybe some of the things that are going on in these spaces, and just to see the importance of being able to communicate with equity.
Yes, thank you for that, Mariella. I think one of the harder things for a lot of folks, especially since we have a global audience, to really wrap their mind around when it comes to equitable communications is I feel that a lot of us can see equitable communications that I need to have the closed captioning on, or I need to have some of my offerings in varied languages to make sure that that communication is there, that I need to make sure that people have a time frame that they can get these resources, or that we're recording things so that people can rewatch it in their own time or at a slower speed or smaller chunks or whatever it might be. All of those things are equitable communications. And yet what's not happening with that is a recognition of the fact I'm going to jump somewhere and I'm going to tie it back in. So some of you might go, where did you go all of a sudden? Where I'm going to is that we in the world right now, according to Western culture and Western ideas, are living in some of the most comfortable times, that we have these certain things that are accessible to us, right? The life of a human has increased. I think for the first time it might have decreased during COVID. But for as far as like inventions and so on and so forth and where we're going, people are using that language that we're in the most comfortable time. And at the same time, loneliness is on a rise. Mental health issues are on a rise. Anxiety is on a rise. Depression is on a rise. You see where I'm going with this? It's like all these things, we're supposed to be the most comfortable generations ever of humanity, but it has all these other things to it that say, are we truly comfortable? And I hear people again and again saying, oh, it's so dull. I feel like I'm just doing the same things over and over again. My curiosity is not sparked at all, right? So when I look at this, I start looking at this idea of having equitable communication. That equitable communication needs to start with the fact that I am talking with and speaking with another human being. And that same thing is coming back. True diversity to me isn't just our physical identifiers, which I find beautiful and gorgeous and want to celebrate in everyone. Our true diversity is our lived experience. Our lived experience, and that's where my authenticity is, needs to come from how I'm going out and into the world, needs to come from that lived experience. And I need to know that I trust the people in the room to share that. when it comes, because we're told, oh, leave that at the door, don't bring that in, don't do these kinds of things. But if I'm super excited about something, right, and I want to bring it to my team because I have this great idea and I want to collaborate with them on it, then why wouldn't I bring my excitement in? Isn't that going to make others excited? And if I have moments where I'm feeling that ache and that grief of not feeling sparked and not feeling curious about something, I want to be able to share those moments as well and be able to allow others to see where I'm at so that we can start to spark each other. So when we talk about equitable communications, I believe that we need to look at what kind of pressures, racism, sexism, homophobia, ageism, all these isms, right? They affect, and we internalize them sometimes to the point of not allowing our authentic self to come to the room. So we need to understand that that is at the core of being able to have equitable communication, being able to recognize these systems that are at play and how they've affected each and every one of us when we want to communicate with one another. Another aspect of it is, how do I make sure that I am actively listening to others? Because like I said, listening is a verb. It's an actionable item. It's an actionable step. But a lot of us don't even know what it means to truly listen. We're formulating our response. We're not giving space when someone's speaking or finished speaking to allow everybody in the room to let that ruminate, to let those emotions come up, to not just jump in, right? Even though it may have caused this reaction in us of like excitement that we want to jump in, still giving that pause, that moment of reflection, right? Another aspect is to look at the power dynamics that are happening within the varied structures that we are working within. And do those power dynamics recognize these first two that we're talking about? And then the fourth one is knowing that this is a process and that all of this is a starting point. It's not an end product. We're not finishing. You're not going to walk away with this and be like, okay, I got this, and this. I'm going to put it into play and everything's going to change. No, you're going to apply your lived experience. You're going to listen to other people's story about how they don't want to speak up or how they don't bring their authentic self or leave their emotions at home, or what other stories they have as to why there hasn't been equitable communication. And then you're going to start figuring out how to tweak these things, grow these things, expand these things that fit your organization and where you are choosing to spend your time and your energy. So that's kind of a brief overset of equitable communication for me.
Yes, I love that. So thorough. And of course, we can probably spend an hour on each point, just diving in on all of those. But I love that you set this up nicely for the following question here, that speaks to an overall employee experience. So this question reads, how can equitable communication impact the overall employee experience? And I think you towards the end of what you were saying. But I'd just love to hear you expand on that. And something that comes up for me is, well, we would probably all be a little more comfortable with the pause, right? So if we are implementing this in the way that we show up as leaders at work, we allow for the pause. Some people call it the sacred pause. Some people call it contemplation. Some people call it reflection. There are lots of ways to call this phenomenon this lost art, I would even say, that allows for reflection, people to digest, new things to be shared, instead of thinking, I need to come up with the right answer. What is the right answer? First of all, I need to be the first to speak so that I can be validated or feel validated. And if I don't, then XYZ might happen. So, allowing for space to happen so that people can be their authentic selves, to come up with new ideas, to be more innovative, to be more sustainable, equitable, diverse, inclusive, all these big words that are like, okay, yeah, we're that. But are you really using, active listening, empathetic questioning in the way that you create space, these moments of pause that allow different voices to be heard. And I would imagine that within the employee experience, people want to be there. People don't want to be somewhere else. People won't experience burnout, or at least not as quickly, because they feel like they can contribute and they feel like they're being heard, because on the other side, active listening is being demonstrated, and not just to check a box. It's actually because they want to hear from you, right? So before I did get a private message regarding the prompt that you gave us in the beginning, Matthew, that says, it was not difficult for me to say I am strong, I am confident, but not easy to say I am powerful, because there is so much in life that I cannot control. So thank you for sharing that, the person that messaged me privately there. Matthew Reynolds, do you want to reflect on any of this? And the question is, how can equitable communication impact the overall employee experience?
I feel that statement that you just read, that someone sent to you privately, answers the question. As a human being, our bodies generate electricity. If we want to get as simple and complex, right, at the same time, we are power. We are powerful. And so to hear that there's so much out of your control, the only thing you need to be in control of is from the top of your head to the tips of your toes and the end of your fingers. There's nothing else to be in control of. There's being confident, right, and strong in the fact that this authentic person is worthy of being in this time. And so when I look at equitable communication and I look at people authentically coming to work and allowing themselves to be there, instead of feeling that doldrum of being just another cog in the machine, but actually actively contributing and activating the 4 C's, okay? The 4 C's are that we are sparking each other's curiosity at work. That's what equitable communication can do. And once that curiosity starts to get sparked and we're actively listening to each other in our groups or in our subgroups at work, then we start to become more creative. And when our creativity starts to go, we start to collaborate. Now, this collaboration can be seen in a couple of different ways. Do I have this idea and I know that these folks have skill set that I need to reach this idea, but I don't have that skill set. So I'm going to ask their consent and ask if they would like to lend their skill set to me reaching this goal. Or I know that as team leader or someone on the team that I have this idea, but oh my gosh, if I put it in the middle of the room of this group of people and they start pulling and like shaping and expanding this idea, it's going to cover more people. It's going to serve more people. It's going to be there for more, or it's going to be its biggest, fullest, and brightest, its strongest. It's whatever it needs to be for your organization or what it is that your organization builds or puts out into the world, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to have much more because of all these varied lived experiences, and that collaboration is human connection. And so people are connecting, and that human connection cannot be devoid of emotions. And it's difficult to have it when we're not equity-based. Equity is not a strategy, right? It's not a framework. Equity is a value. And if your organization does not value equity and instead values a hierarchical structure, then equitable communication becomes a tool for productivity only. And that's not what it is. We're seeing with younger generations, we're seeing with the statistics that I gave you that yes, we're the most comfortable, I use that really loosely, comfortable generation but we have the most anxiety and stress and depression and et cetera, ever. There's something not right. There's something that's not going on. And my judgment is what we're talking about. We've dehumanized to the point where these things can't happen. The 4 C's can't happen. We're not allowing people to connect in this way. We're not allowing each other to spark each other's curiosity. It's like, I've got to be the team leader. I've got to come up with the ideas. It's got to be all about me. I've got to have these things, right? And it's got this stranglehold on it instead of letting things go and humanizing folks. We dehumanize folks all day long. How I'm trying to change my language around this. How many use the word homeless or houseless? Can we put like a 1 in if you use it? Homeless or houseless? Just put a 1 in the chat if you use it, that term. Thank you for speaking your truth. Thank you for doing that. If we want to stop dehumanizing, then why don't we say people without homes? Because now I've humanized it. I put people there because that's what it is. There's people involved in that. Yet I live in a society that's indoctrinated me, and I use the term houseless, homeless, houseless population. There's still no people involved, and it becomes easy to not see that there's human beings that are involved in this conversation that we might be having about that, right? So what other language are we using in our equitable communications that's actually dehumanizing folks and not seeing their humanity first and foremost?
Ooh, I got a big one, Matthew.
Go ahead.
Users.
Say it again.
Users. I mean, right? Probably everyone on the call is using that in some language in their workplace. So thank you for allowing us to have a moment to reflect on language. But I just wanted to throw that one out. Users, just to put it in the workplace.
I was gonna wrap things up at that point anyway, because I feel like there was so much. And see, for me, when I let the pause happen, y'all, it grows exponentially, which I think is a beautiful thing, but I need to pull it in sometimes and not process out loud why the WAIT acronym that I use in a lot of my offerings of crafting your equity lens. WAIT stands for why am I talking? Why aren't I talking? And again, it's another question to help us get to that authentic self that sometimes brings up particular language that's like, oh, okay, I'm talking to myself. That's not the authentic me. The authentic me wants to be present, wants to be here. So why am I talking? I was processing out loud. So Mariella, I'm going to pass it back over to you and look at some of the beautiful things being put in the chat.
Yes, I'm going to highlight some things out loud just in case we got folks rewatching this. So thank you all for writing in the chat here. All right, so going up a little further, Tatiana writes, on the wheel of emotions, overwhelmed was under fear, which I found really interesting because it makes so much sense now that I have seen it, but I would have never put it together. So thank you, Tatiana, for sharing that. Something else I'll highlight, Sebastian writes, I've been homeless before. People without homes and homeless people or homeless population are the same to me, honestly. Obviously, I can't speak for everyone, though. So thank you, Sebastian, for sharing your truth. Colleen writes in the chat, people with disabilities. I am working on changing my language to put people first when talking about people with disabilities or people with certain health conditions or people who struggle with addictions. Thank you, Colleen, for sharing that in the chat. And Colleen has also shared a resource in the chat here that her company or their company shared with them. So thank you for dropping that in the chat there. Matthew, you wanna reflect on any of these things here? I want to just reiterate for folks who might need that. Can you repeat the 4 C's plain and clear for everyone?
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you for that. And Sebastian, thank you for that. I too have also been homeless for large chunks of my time. It's not, I don't state that for an oppression Olympics kind of thing in any way, shape, or form. The reason that I say putting people first, and that it may not mean anything to you, And yet when you have a whole culture and society that continues to use language that doesn't see the person first, and it becomes about these systems that are trying to build certain things that don't actually help the people, the population that it's there to help, or creates laws that blocks helping them because somebody still wants to only make money off of low income housing. I think is where I was going with that more, is along the lines of just making sure that we put the humanity back into some of the language that we use, that is dehumanizing. And as we see with Colleen, putting the word people before things is a strong effort that jogs people really quickly and is like, oh yeah, we're talking about people. We're not just talking about a definition that our company uses to serve, right? But we're actually putting the people in there first. And that's what we should think of first, in my judgment. The 4 C's. Again, the first C is curiosity. The second C is creativity. The third C is collaboration. And the fourth C is connection. Curiosity, spark that curiosity, gets our creativity going. We boldly ask for collaboration, which is then connecting us all and connecting our humanity. Thank you for that. And thank you for that spark, everybody who's putting things in the chat and bringing things up. Feels good.
Yes. It feels good. Thank you. Thank you. And I did get a question here. Do we have a Slack community to continue this conversation from the sessions? And the answer is we don't have a Slack community, but we are starting a book club that will also entail writing, maybe watching some films, where we will continue to dive deeper into some of these, really chewy topics in an intimate online space. So if you're interested in joining Matthew and I in this book club, writing club, film club, special, intimate session, please fill out this form that I'm going to drop in the chat here. And if you all are rewatching this and you don't have access to the link in the chat, please go to our websites or follow us on LinkedIn and ask us. So Matthew Reynolds, shout out your website here so folks can connect with you.
I'll go ahead and I'll drop it in the chat.
Cool. But for folks who are rewatching this, who might not have access to the chat, I mean.
There we go. Because it's already there, right? mrrconsulting.org. So mrrconsulting, all one word, .org.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes. All right. So let's keep this boat sailing. So we've got about 15 minutes left. I'm going to go on to some questions a little further down here. So let's roll into this one. Would love to hear your thoughts on this, Matthew. So how would you go about engaging with employees who don't believe in the value of these diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging focused practices? How do you connect with colleagues who don't feel open discussions are productive or necessary? For example, we did get a question that came in about keeping emotions out of the workplace is my biggest interest at the moment. So what do you think about that? How do you engage with employees who don't feel like these sorts of practices should be allowed in the workplace?
I'm not a fan of cancel culture, and I'm not a fan of dragging people. I call it dragging people kicking and screaming to something. I'm just not. And so if this is something that is striking you, meaning that it's landing, it's not just here in the head, right? Because there's a lot of thinking going on. And somatically, there's not a lot of what's happening in my body. Am I getting sweaty from this? Is my heart rate going up? And not necessarily only from anxiety, but also excitement to do something new, right? And it's important for me to understand those aspects of it as I move forward as well. And so when I hear people say, oh, this shouldn't be in the workplace, it's not the way to be, then I ask, is your company or organization using such terms as global leader, or that you want to be globally recognized, or you want to be a global citizen? Because the way that humanity is moving is humanity, the statistics that I gave you at the beginning, there's a lot of folks that are looking at that. And there are a lot of folks out there who are recognizing that we have dehumanized corporate America. We have dehumanized capitalism. We have dehumanized a lot of these systems that are out there that don't see a person's humanity. And so I think a lot of folks are going, wow, we're stuck. We're stuck in this catch-22 that isn't really serving people, and it's harming people. Thus, depression levels being up, loneliness being up, mental health issues being up, et cetera, et cetera. We elongated our life by creating these creature comforts. Now, what are we going to do with this life that we've elongated? Are we just going to be bummed out and depressed about it? Or are we going to try to spark each other's curiosity and get creative and come up with some new ideas? And if that group is a smaller group of folks and isn't your larger team, they become the pebbles in the pond. You don't have to drag people kicking and screaming. They'll start to feel the energy change, and it will shift as we go forward. So it's really important, I think, for us to understand that aspect of it too as we go forward. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matthew. All right. So thank you all for participating in the chat. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Remember that if you attend all 3 of our sessions, this is the second one, that you can get a mindful leadership badge from Power to Fly. And we've dropped the link just in case you weren't able to watch the first one. And you'll also have to include a short form there to get the mindful leadership badge there. So yes, can we have the link to the first session? Thank you, Jordan. I'll write that in just a few moments in the chat. All right, so let's move on to this next question here. Where do I go? So many places to go after what you just said. So let me see which question I want to lean into now. Okay. How can I practice soft skills, or as we are calling them today, essential skills? What are some go-to strategies to start developing an equitable communication style? Matthew, I'd love to hear from you. One thing I want to highlight, as Matthew said in the beginning, is that this is a process, right? A lot of people use this analogy of this is a marathon, not a sprint. There is no button to fix anything. There is no button to change anything. We have to make sure that we're taking the steps on the path. And so if that path is to become more developed in our emotional intelligence, to become more developed in the way that we communicate in an equitable way, we can only be the ones to take a step or to be able to move forward however we decide to move forward, whether it be flying, dreaming, dancing, rolling, walking, however we decide to take the path, it is you who has to do that. So I want to say, just to quickly answer that question in a really practical way, is make space in your agenda, make space in your calendar to do that. Because if not, years will go by and maybe you dedicated 1 hour, which is today with us, and then you didn't do anything else because time goes by quickly. There's so many things, that we put on the table to do. So please, make time in your calendar to practice. And even if it's holding space for yourself to, go through some of the grounding exercise that Matthew Reynolds kicked us off with here in the beginning, so that we can try to get all the noise out of our mind and remember that we are powerful, that we can be confident and strong leaders in the space. So use your agenda, mark some time on your calendar. And another thing I want to mention, offer wellness perks to your employees so that you can insist that each person develops their own essential skills. If you are not offering some sort of partnership or perk, or it's not already in the policy that you have to take X amount of time, not you should take X amount of time, because most people, according to a lot of statistics that we're reading, they don't feel that they have the time to do these kinds of things. They don't want to even tap into their, wheel of emotion, because one, it's probably scary for a lot of people. Two, it's not in our institutions to practice this. We've been asked, historically speaking, we've been asked to check these things at the door, in the workplace, in, educational institutions, in different spaces. So it would be revolutionary for leaders to insist that their employees use wellness perks. So, a lot of these things cost a little bit of money. A lot of these things cost some time and energy. So you as a leader can implement that into your workplace, and that will help a lot in a lot of different ways. So Matthew, I'd love to hear what you have to say as well. Again, I'll read the question. How can I practice essential skills? What are some go-to strategies to start developing an equitable communication style?
I'm looking at my notes. I think that it's important, Mariella, what you were just talking about, to make it part of your culture, and know that the culture is shifting and that the culture will shift as you hire diverse peoples with different varied lived backgrounds and outward identifiers, or how they choose to identify and be in the world, that all of that is going to add to your culture, and not to be afraid of that. I think we tried to homogenize a culture at work and say, no, this is the culture and this is how you act here. And then they throw out the P word because that's professional, right? When in all actuality, we are hindering people from bringing all of their work, like what they can bring truly to it, if they were allowed to bring their authentic selves to work and they felt comfortable and safe to do that. Judgment, that's how I feel. Okay. So having said that, I think that some of the actionable steps to get this going is self-reflection, just like Mariella was saying. Find the time. If you want to use your phone and do an audio thing and just kind of check in, or if you want to have an emotion wheel, right? I think I saw someplace that had a keychain that had the emotion wheel printed on it, kind of thing. And then throughout the course of a day, you want to just look at that emotion wheel and jot down the emotion that's coming up for you. And then self-reflect at the end of the day, what was going on during those different points, right? Evaluation, when we get further off into kind of the organizational aspect of it, is it part of your evaluation to check in with people? And they're not just their emotional intelligence or their essential skills, but also the ideas of wellness can definitely be a part of that evaluation. And then listen to the feedback. Don't ask for it and then don't do anything with the feedback that you get. Actively listen to the feedback that folks that are working on your teams or in your organization are giving you. And then maybe even from there, there's a subgroup that is created to actually start saying and looking at possible aspects on how you can build more equitable communications, et cetera, right? Like I said, you're sparking curiosity and it's going to create new. Some things are going to work, some things aren't. Then some things are going to rise, some things are going to fall. It's going to expand out, right? And I think one of the key things at the end of all of that is elevating new voices. What voices right now in your organization are the ones that get the most time? Everybody gets a communication from. Everybody has to listen to, right? What would happen if you put together lunchtime chats, depending on your organization, right? Now this is something, because we don't want to put people in harm's way, right? If I know that I have someone who has been harassed in particular ways or whatnot, I don't want to put them in a situation where that's going to happen, right? And it has to be consent-based. But what to me is a wonderful way to give a question and you have lunch with someone new. every Tuesday, let's say. You go with a different team member and have lunch. And this is the question that you're going to talk about over lunch, which could be answered or is the kickoff place. And next thing you know, you're somewhere else, but folks share lunch together. And maybe that's the day that the company picks up the lunch tab. I don't know. Be creative. Let it go out there. But those are some of the actionable steps that I think that people can actually put into play to create habit, because that's the big one, right? We started with gusto and I'm going to do this, and we put that up there. And then in 2 weeks, we're not doing it anymore. So then I guess what I would tag on, because this is something that I do with my Crafting Your Equity lens, is get a group of 3 or more and have them be your accountability partners and share with them that I'm not having you be my accountability partner because I want you to fix me. I want you to hold me in integrity with the things that I say I want to be held accountable to. I want to be held accountable to writing out these emotions for 21 days. Every day, I'm going to write down emotions periodically throughout the day. And then I want you to text me on Sundays. That's how you can support me, right? And if they don't say how to support them, we can ask, how would you like me to support you? And then it's not about shame and guilt and like shaming and guilting someone and being like, oh, you didn't do it, huh? Well, give me 25 push-ups. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's not about that. It's like, I hear that you didn't get this done. So how can I support you? What does support look like? And if it's like, give me another week to try to do it without any support in place, because that's kind of my thing too. I want to start doing these things a little more on my own and making habit, then that might be it as well. Kind of a long answer, but I hope that people got something from that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And with that, we've got about 2 minutes left. So I've been dropping some helpful links in the chat throughout our conversation. I'm just going to reiterate one link here. This is a free PDF on this is a free PDF on crafting your equity lens. So for those who might not know this beautiful offering that you have to share with the world on crafting your equity lens, Matthew, can you let us know what that's about, and again, how folks can reach out to you if they're interested? I've dropped some Google forms so that people can let us know if they're interested, so we can give a demo or just answer further questions, because we don't have so much time in this hour to go through that. But what is this Crafting Your Equity Lens workshop training about, and why should our listeners now be interested in it?
Thank you, Mariella, for that. I'm going to go ahead and say that this time, go to the website, check it out, open up that free PDF, read through it. And if questions come up for you, I'll see y'all during the 3rd session that we're going to have here, and try to answer some questions then and give a little bit more of a formal invitation to Crafting Your Equity Lens. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. All right, so I don't see anything else coming up in the chat. We have about 1 more minute left. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you for dropping your reflections, your resources, your questions in the chat. Remember the 4 C's: curiosity, creativity, collaboration, and connection. And if anyone in the beginning felt anything when they were tapping into that grounding exercise, this disempowerment, that someone felt they didn't feel powerful, some people felt other things, lean into these 4 C's, and of course on your own. And then when we start to do that collaboratively in a collective group, whether it be in the workplace or in our communities, I hope that it can, that you can find your own way in empowering yourself, and then that in turn empowering other people. So the 4 C's, y'all, is real: curiosity, creativity, collaboration, and connection. That's what I want to leave you all with today. We went over a lot of different things, so I definitely recommend rewatching this and reaching out to us if you have any other questions. So enjoy the rest of your day. Matthew Reynolds, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Power to Fly. Thank you, everyone who's joined, and we'll see you on the next one, part 3. Much love, everyone. Peace.